Well, it was a bad week for TD Bank. Canada's second largest bank has agreed to pay a record $3 billion in fines to American regulators for allowing drug cartels to use the bank's services for money laundering. Let's bring in Nivrita Ganguly to break it down for us. Niv, what exactly has TD pleaded guilty to, and how significant are these fines?
Well, the fines, they're historic, really. It's the largest penalty ever imposed by US regulators on a bank under the anti-money laundering law. In fact, TD has now become the first bank ever to plead guilty to charges of conspiracy to commit money laundering in the US. Now, the crux of the misconduct and what TD has now admitted to is that over a period of 6 years, the bank allowed 3 money laundering networks to transfer more than $670 million through the bank. Now, these were criminal networks laundering what is considered to be illegal earnings, and at least one of the 3 were laundering drug money. So the $3.1 billion, it's the result of penalties from 3 different US authorities, including the US Justice and Treasury Departments. TD's also been hit by an asset cap, which means that its US business is now facing growth restrictions. Now, that's a way for regulators to ensure that the bank improves its compliance. So in this case, until TD improves its anti-money laundering monitoring system, its reporting and risk assessment systems to a level that US regulators are satisfied with, it will be restricted from taking on new business in the US.
Wow, so how has TD responded to all of this?
TD says it acknowledges and takes full responsibility for the failures, and that there are, quote, significant efforts underway to remediate their anti-money laundering program in the US. Now, we should say the $3 billion penalty, it's not a small amount, even for TD. You know, TD had disclosed this investigation, and it's been setting aside money for exactly this potential outcome. So as a result, we've seen the bank report consecutive quarterly losses this year, and that's actually the first time in decades that TD's reported losses. So the good news for TD, if we can call it that, is that its provisions cover nearly the entire amount of the fines, and in that sense, it's already taken this hit and it's already priced in. But what's more concerning to some analysts is the asset cap on its US business, which makes up about 1/3 of the bank's total business. So now that explains why we saw quite a bit of a sell-off in the stock after this news came out. Shares fell about 10% over 2 days, which, by the way, is the biggest 2-day fall that we've seen in that stock since the COVID crash. That was in March of 2020. It's obviously a long weekend here in Canada, but we're keeping an eye on Tuesday's open to see how the market continues to digest this news.
So TD has pleaded guilty to the charges, but how was this allowed to happen? Did TD know what was going on?
Yeah, this is the really interesting bit, because as more details emerge, we're getting a much clearer picture of just how lax TD's monitoring systems have been for years, in fact. According to regulators, one criminal network had people, quote, dumping piles of cash on the bank's counters. Another apparently made ATM withdrawals that were about 40 to 50 times higher than the daily allowable limit. There was a TD Bank employee who deposited more than $1 million US in cash in a single day and then used wire transfers to move those funds out of the bank again. So what makes it worse for the bank is that regulators have these emails between TD managers, you know, emails that say things like, and this is a quote, "You guys really need to shut this down, LOL." So that's a very strong case, and it points to years of misconduct. US Attorney General Merrick Garland, in fact, in his comments, said that by making its services so convenient for criminals, TD Bank essentially became one.
Wow, definitely a lot of lessons to be learned, Niv. Thank you so much for this. That's Nivrita Ganguly reporting from the Global Newsroom.
Thanks, Amanlina.